You look busy, so I brought myself in first. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Oh,
Time.
I muted your mic.
It should be unmuted now.
Okay, but I can hear myself.
Well,
So you may have to get back out and check.
I don't think it's coming from me. Let me see.
Well, it's not coming from me. It couldn't be coming from me. I'm perfect and I don't do anything wrong.
Well, I guess you're just going to have to talk for a minute. I'm going to have to reboot my computer.
No, actually, it sounds better now. I don't hear anything now.
Yeah, it should be okay.
I don't hear it.
Yeah,
I don't hear it now.
fixed.
Okay, how are you this morning, Michael?
Good. Busy. How about you, Jenny?
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. We did have a tragedy around here last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So I was making a casserole last night and I had 2 pounds of sausage on the counter to make the casserole with. And and Dave had just come home. I was getting ready to get in the kitchen and get this started. And I'm like, what happened to one of the rolls of sausage that was
Dang it.
there on my counter? So yeah, we had the dog decided she really needed a whole case of sausage, whole
Yeah.
pound of sausage.
Need a little protein kick there.
Yeah. So I can't believe she hasn't started puking all over everywhere. I mean, I thought that was going to happen last night. I mean, because she ate it with the plastic and everything. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh,
How does
wow.
that happen?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But outside of that, everything's fine. We have recovered. The
Yeah.
dog is still alive, which I think is a miracle because I was in the kitchen with knives. So,
It's just sausage. That's it. Just sausage.
yeah, a whole pound of sausage. So it was
Yeah.
like the last hour, and I'm trying to hurry up and find something else to make for dinner. So we just had breakfast for dinner. Worked out fine. Everybody was
Well,
happy.
how
We
many
all
people
got
do you have
fed.
coming over? You're cooking that much sausage.
You what?
I said, how many people did you have coming
Oh,
over for dinner? You're making that much sausage.
no, it was a casserole. And so
Oh,
it had that much, it had that much in the casserole. And so there you go. So nothing exciting. Your dog doesn't jump on your counter or anything. So
oh yeah. Dogs will be dogs.
I actually caught her physically on the counter one time. I'm like,
Wow.
how does that dog get on the counter? I just
Yeah, you
could
got
not
big
figure.
dogs.
I'm like, but how do you jump? I can't jump that high and jump on the top of the counter. How does that happen? Well, okay, so enough about my stupid dog. We have Julianne Romanello, who will be coming on in a little bit, and we have a great discussion for today. I mean, it's a tremendous discussion for today. Because I think sadly, now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think sadly we kind of get up and we go about our business and we don't stop to think about all the ways that government has its knife in our back. And because, I mean, why would you want to? Number one, I mean, there are other things to think about in a day.
Yeah.
But I think when you really stop and you think about it, we are, I mean, our freedoms are, I don't even think they're trickling away anymore. I think they're deluging away. I think we're
Yeah.
having, I mean, it's happening in front of our faces. And, you know, I cannot remember, and I should have pulled it out before we went on, that the saying that Reagan had about freedom is only in the grasp of, the current generation, the next generation. If we don't teach them how to love it, it's gone,
Yeah.
essentially, is what I'm paraphrasing. Well, that's exactly what we have happening. I mean, when we don't have schools that teach history, that don't teach, a love of freedom, that don't teach the Constitution, that don't do this, and then parents don't do it. Because see, that's the other key, is that parents don't do it either. It's kind of like religion. Part of the reason why we're seeing just an absolute, I don't know what you want to call it. What just religion is going right down the toilet, specifically the Christian religion. I mean, we're seeing churches close. People don't go to church anymore. They don't feel like there's a message there. They didn't instruct their kids to appreciate
Yeah.
that. And so their kids don't appreciate it. They grow up and, then you have what you have. So,
Yeah. Well, in honor of Julianne, I wore my socialism shirt here. See my little guy with his money.
oh, I
Here's
like
here's the
that.
socialist. Here's the socialist here.
I
I like
like
wearing
that.
that. I like wearing that shirt out.
I bet you do. Do people
But
say
that's
anything to you about that one?
oh yeah, I get a lot of comments. But
See?
everything you said, I mean, it goes back to education. It goes back to our regular school system. Yes, it goes back to the parents, but also, it's that old adage. If you're not growing, you're dying. In whether it's business or whatever, your faith, whatever it may be. In government, the same issue. The government is on warp speed about growing the size, spending money, the whole 9 yards, every facet and way they can get into our lives. They're doing it now. with the onset of this technology that we have at our fingertips every single day, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, it's convenient for us. It's nice. We have the world at our fingertips, but also we've got that massive intrusion into our lives, into our data that just goes into the control grid.
Well, and I think the worst part about it is, and I'm going to bring Julianne in here in just a second. The worst part about it is this: so many people don't even want to know.
Yeah.
It's like if you tell me, then I'll see it, and then if I see it, I have to do something with it. So many
Yeah.
people, you start talking about it, and they just start going like this, la 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 la. They just don't want to hear it. And that I think is the worst problem, because if we're going to push back at all, if we have any chance of, I don't know, treading water even, or somehow regaining the liberty that we once had, we have to be able to see it, understand it, see where it's coming from. And that's the thing I love about Julianne. I was looking on her Facebook page this morning. Julianne, good night. I'm going to bring her on. Good morning, Julianne. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Jenny? How are you, Michael?
Good.
I always love having you on, but I went to your Facebook page this morning and I'm already like, there's even more stuff on your page.
Well, I've been recycling a lot of old posts because, I think there are new people coming on and becoming aware of all of this. And so, sometimes I'll circle back to topics and then I'll end up finding new things about those topics. And I think it's interesting and it's, of course, relevant. So, yeah, you're right. There's just so much to understand. And that shouldn't be a deterrent for people. We need to look at this sort of like a puzzle and think of, our purpose as human beings. And, we're designed to know these things. And so, it, if we can sort of shift our mind away from that fear that you mentioned and the aversion to hearing a lot of bad stuff. And if we can think about it like, hey, this is a puzzle for us to figure out, and it's actually enjoyable at some level to be on the page of reality, then
Well, that's a good point.
I mean, because all human beings desire to know, right? So we have to look at this like there are many pieces, and I can understand this. And that knowledge is going to make my life better, even if it's bad news. It's still, being in touch with what's real and what's true. And so, yeah, so I try to find things that I've said before that new followers on Facebook might not know about, and just things that are interesting. And so, yeah, there's a lot there.
Well, I hadn't really thought about it the way you just said it, because I think all of us, and me for sure, just lately, I'm just struggling. It's a struggle. You
Yeah.
have your lot, have kids, we have, this farm, you've got your house stuff, and then trying to keep up with everything else that's going on. I mean, there are days that I just want to, well, I accidentally left my phone in the car for like 2 hours yesterday.
I
And I
do
was
that
like,
on purpose.
oh my gosh, I got so much done in 2 hours. What
Yeah.
happened? But it's true. I do think part of the reason why people don't want to hear this kind of stuff, and why they just get frustrated by it is so much. And I mean, the way you described it just a second ago, I think is really the way we have to look at it. I mean, you're right. It's a privilege to live in reality.
Yeah, and like Michael was saying about the education system, I mean, I think the schools today are conditioning people to, figure out discrete problems, and they're usually
Yeah.
technical problems. And we need to shift that thought back to an older understanding about what education is. And this directly plays into, the project of self-governing. We have to think about education as a means by which we understand what's going on around us, and our opinions about things are grounded in facts. And we just have to start first with knowing what really is going on. And, then we can think about solving problems. But first, we have to know that the basics is, the basic point is for us to understand. And I think if we can, make that, it sounds like a small step, but it's probably a very big one given today's milieu. Then maybe we can adjust away from the sort of, deer in the headlights look of, oh my goodness, what do I do about it? To stepping back and saying, okay, here's what's actually going on. Let me take a breath. Let me pause. And then, develop strategies for, trying to intervene in this world that, as we know, is becoming increasingly tyrannical and opposed to that project of knowing what's going on. So
at the end of the broadcast, remind me, I've got 3 screens up here to share today, because I really do think that what you said is completely accurate. I think long before, I think originally, even though we were fighting Common Core, it was one thing, right? So we could stay focused on pretty much that one thing. Now, there weren't some ancillaries we got into, but that was, the one thing that we focused on. And we got a lot done and a lot of people educated because we focused on that one thing. Now, it wasn't that there weren't 500 things happening, out there as well. But, we focused on that one thing. And I think that what we're doing now is, because I think this is, design. And I think you talked about it one of the other times, that the powers that be, I really do believe, want to just hit us fast and furiously with all these problems, so that you just kind of feel like your mind is blowing up and there's nothing you can do, because everything is just, it's a blank curtain of darkness closing, and you're like, how do you navigate that? So I do think, even in that sense, what you said is important. Self-governance, we've got to go back to that. And that's when you tell yourself, it's not a black curtain of darkness closing in. Find one. Come on. Let's cut the dramatics. Find one thing, and work on your one thing. So I mean, I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, you've actually really helped my mood today. So
Well, I want to touch on just one of the subtleties of what Julianne just said. And I teach this to my kids. I stress this more than anything, but it's that basic concept, and just mastering the basics, the most fundamental things. They need to be at a mastered level. Like, as an example, you take education. If we actually taught our kids to master the basics of math and English, or reading, writing, the couple core, subjects, by the time they got into junior high and high school, where it's so innate, it's just so automatic, unconscious, they're unconsciously competent at all those things, you would not have a lot of these issues. And like, to go back, like, I love it that you're recycling these older posts or older things you're doing, because I think as you learn something, you change. As you look at something that's old in the new perspective, because you have more knowledge now, you're more informed. Those things may have a little different tilt. So I think it's hugely important. But we need to look at the basics of the Constitution. Liberty, freedom, sovereignty, limited government. None of those things they're just completely swept under the rug, and we're just so, like, enveloped by everything. We have no ability to just sit down and think and focus. It's just one little thing, just turns everybody upside down. There's just no basic concept of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to talk about forms of tyranny, and so
Eventually.
yeah, we want to get to that, but everything that you guys say always reminds me of other things. And so, I recently revisited some of the John Taylor Gatto interviews about education.
Yeah.
And, he mentioned that in one of these lectures, he said, there was actually a study that proved that you could, like a student who didn't go to any formal school, but concentrated on fishing, because he was using this example of a kid who loved to fish, and he spent days and hours each day going out and learning all of the the basic principles of that. Let's say, let's call it an art, the art of fishing.
Well, it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, I've never caught well, I did catch a bunch of fish, but I had a guide. I never caught one on my own.
Still.
But Gatto's point was that, if you take a subject, say, that you love or that's important to you, and this goes to your point, Jenni, about, sort of focusing on Common Core and learning all the ins and outs of it. If you focus on that process of learning one art or one area very deeply, and of course you have to know math, you have to be able to read and think critically in order to do those those arts and studies at a high level. The habits of mind that you develop, the perseverance, the love of figuring out the little details and how they all work into the big picture, that provides a foundation for understanding many more topics. So if you can sort of focus on one area, but do it in such a way that you develop these habits of mind that enable you to, approach any subject with rigor and depth and with a wideness of scope, you're going to be very far ahead of the people who just get sound bites and lots of bits of information. They can't synthesize them. They can't fit them into an overall picture about what's real and what isn't. So, so I hope that might sort of encourage people who are going to listen to our dark talk about tyranny, to say, hey, I have what I need. I've been given this by God, to approach any kind of problem, at this foundational level, like I have that. And maybe it manifests itself in fishing. Maybe it manifests itself in some kind of, understanding of policy area or whatever. But we do have those tools. We just have to cut out the noise and develop richly our capacities. And so people can do this, and as long as you have one way in and you've got a sense of wonder and you have a love of life itself, then we can tackle this, Jenni.
No, and I mean, you're completely right. I mean, and again, I mean, we pointed this out numerous times. I mean, we're all Christians here. I mean, Christ can do anything through us. That's what Paul said in Ephesians. So we've got to keep that in mind. Let's go to something that Michael and I despise.
Oh, good.
I don't think there's anything I despise more than this. So I'm going to go ahead because the links that you sent me the other day, I went ahead and I've got them all sitting right here. So let's go to, I'm not sure what you want to start with, but let's start with this one if this works. And we'll see if this works. How about that one?
Oh, yes.
You want to start with that one?
Oh, yes, we can start with that. I'm gonna
Okay.
pull it up here on my handy little device.
Okay. So while you're doing that, I barfed when I read this. I mean,
Yep.
this is just, I mean, here's the bottom line. It's all about money. And, my husband is not, I mean, he's very awake. He knows all this stuff, but I mean, he has a job. I mean, he has to work, for a living.
Yep.
So he doesn't get super involved in this, but he says this to me regularly. And I think it's just so 100% spot on. We have in our heads, and David Holt is the absolute
Yes.
headpiece for this thought process. We have it in our brains that we can only become better. We can only be better as a people. We can only strive if we're ripping stuff down and slapping new stuff in. And if we're spending money and because we've got it, we're big league city. He says this all the time, to David Holt, just like so many other mayors and so many of the other people who are actually in leadership positions today, to them, moving forward means destroying the old in many senses, and spending a lot of money to create something new, because we have to it's all about money, and it's all about creating something new.
Yeah, they wanna build back better.
Yes.
Over and over and over again.
Yes.
It's planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't know, you guys do this to me. You make me think of all these funny little things. When I'm 43. So in 1981, when I was born, my mom and dad had a washing machine.
Yeah.
And they still had that washing machine when I was in college.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if I buy an appliance today, I'm lucky if it lasts 5 years.
Especially a washing machine.
I know, right?
It's the worst.
I bought a commercial heavy duty unsmart washing machine when all this supply chain stuff I was like, I've got to get one now,
Yeah.
I'm glad I did. But if I think anyone can relate to the effects of planned obsolescence, right? And it is just to drain our pocketbooks over and over again,
sure.
and to make us dependent,
Yeah.
on the retailers, on the manufacturers, like we were talking about John Deere parts the last time, right? This land value capture, economic development for cities, build back better, it is the same thing going on, except it's on a huge scale. And it is the government with the corporations in a nasty partnership that tells us what we have to destroy and what we have to build back. So, with this land value capture model, which, Jenni, you and I talked about TIF districts, and that is the prime tool for land value capture in the U.S.
And also this one, business improvement districts, I hadn't heard, and local improvement districts.
Yeah. And they have mental health districts. They have, arts and entertainment districts. Any kind of district they can imagine, they're going to create, but they all work the same way. And basically what that is it's a sort of, a cabal, a cartel that decides, okay, we have this area right here and we're going to take it. We're going to tell you that it's good for you when we take it, and make you pay the measly sum, that is going to compensate, property owners for the taking. We're going to make taxpayers fund that while we reap all the rewards, while we make all the choices about what's going to go in. So, all over Oklahoma, you see these new amusement parks and stadiums being built, and different kinds of, attractions for the experience economy. It's all part of this Build Back Better that has declared, or and actually I should say, it has designed the old to fall. It's designed things to crumble. So you know when they started doing these visioning programs and other implementation of the agenda through comprehensive planning, they knew that their Build Back Better back then was not going to last, and so it was going to crumble. We'd have distressed neighborhoods. It was going to lead to poverty and dependence, and so eventually the same people who built it up would get to tear it down and then reap all the financial rewards for building it back better on our dime, and they get all the profit. So the public shoulders all the risk while the private sector partnering with the
He's
government,
already giggling. We're in trouble
they
now.
get all the profits. They get all the rewards. And so this is a slick marketing tool. These land banks, transit-oriented development, TIF zones, it's a slick tool to appeal to people's desire to see their neighborhood, their city, whatever, their area, town, do well economically.
Well,
But
and I want to point something out here, and I wanted to read this a second because they use, you just said it a second ago, they use a marketing tool. So just
yeah,
listen to this. Land value capture policies ensure that everyone benefits when public investment increases the value of privately held land. What? So when you really go back and you look at that, land value capture policies ensure that everyone benefits when public investment. Okay, is there public investment? Let's start there. Is there such a thing as public investment? There really isn't. I mean, you cannot, it would be forced public investment. You would have to go, because not everybody's going to agree with the investment, right? Let's say that a town, Oklahoma City, wants to have an amphitheater put in. Gosh, that's not been in the news. So they want an amphitheater. So they'll go to a place where there is some land, and they will have the assessor assess the land at the value that they want to have to borrow on that to create whatever it is that they're going to use. Now, you're really in trouble if it happens to be a private piece of land, because then the government can just come in and say, well, we have to have that. It's an absolute necessity to have this. So we're therefore going to take your land away from you because we can. And then we're going to put this up in its place. This is, people don't understand that that's all Marxist. Ensure that everyone benefits when public investment increases the value of privately held land.
yeah,
So what they're trying to say is, if you allow us to indebt your property more, your assessed value will go up.
yep,
So you owe more taxes on that because the assessor has come in and put a higher value on your land, so they can take those taxes from that.
yeah,
That's how that works.
yeah.
And then they look at you and say, oh, but the assessor has valued your house $50,000 more. You find somebody who's going to buy that house for that then.
Exactly. Yeah,
Because
it's a ruse.
any amount is only as good as what a person will pay for that.
Yep.
So this is all BS.
It's total BS. Like this is just projecting some, some fictitious situation out into the nebulous future, and for the benefit of everyone, so that we can all live sustainable, vibrant, livable, happy, inclusive lives, right?
Did
And they say it's going to
from
be wonderful. And so we're going to borrow money based on that dream world. And that the value of that dream world is going to finance, the real debt, the real taking from taxpayers, from individuals, that's going to hurt right now. And guess what? The dream may never be realized. So like, in Veneta, they're building this giant amusement park,
Right.
like 2 million acres or
They
no,
did it
not
on a
much.
TIF too, didn't they?
I would not be surprised. I mean, I'm sure that
I thought they did.
they've zoned it in some strange way that follows the Smart Growth America Complete Streets, zoning regulations, which all go back to the UN, which is, like you say, it is a Marxist organization operating on, the principles of collectivization. And so, in Veneta, all they have to do is say, this park is coming. And guess what? It's going to attract so many visitors. And then we're going to, our infrastructure won't be able to handle it. So they not only use this dream world to take people's property and to raise their taxes, but then to justify the creation of a whole slew of support projects. And guess what? Who knows if that park is ever going to be built? But everyone is so risk averse, they're so afraid of this dream future world and the risk that it might carry, that they go along with it, or they've just got their head in the sand. But then you're going to have lots of highways. In Tulsa, we have an interchange that we have all the big prongs for a new spaghetti bowl interchange, and there's no road on those support beams. And I saw that in Texas this past weekend. And so you just
Really?
see, they're funding these sidewalks to nowhere based on what? These weird future dream world projections.
Well, now that too also could be because I know the Biden administration was just giving, they print money and give it out.
Yeah.
We're such peons, we don't get it. But they were doing all these sidewalk projects. So if you were a city, they just give you, $50,000 or $50 million to do a sidewalk, or because they want the walkable
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they say it adds value. Well, come on, like they are manipulating this concept of value and playing with it in their words, but in the meantime, it has real concrete consequences for you, for me, for the whole middle class, which they're working to decimate.
Right.
And it's a huge burden on the poor and those who are sort of at the like lower end of the upper class. They're going to find that they start to hurt as well, because this program is so comprehensive and it touches everything that we do. They're going to just keep draining our pocketbooks, because why? Because that's how planned obsolescence works. You just keep creating bad products, unwanted products, and making people, grasp for, for some kind of solution to all
Well,
of this.
that's the classic Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. They
Yeah.
create a problem or a bad product or this planned obsolescence or whatever, and they do it on purpose because they know what the reaction is going to be, and then they're the solution to the same problem that they created in the first place. And I just want to tell everybody, anytime, I mean, all these websites are so slick. They have awesome graphics. They have, all the buzzwords. Their logos are nice, but anytime they say anything about value, that just means they're going to increase your taxes. Value is going to increase their power, their taxes, their ability to take from us. That's what value means when it comes from the government.
Yeah.
Well, so I did find it. So they are trying to do a TIF on this Veneta thing. Now, here's the interesting thing. So Mansions American is actually the developer. All right.
Mhm.
So what happened to the days when the developer was the one that had to go get the money, had to produce the plans, it was all on their backs? And I think you said it earlier, Julianne, it was perfect, Nobody wants to accept risk anymore. So instead of them getting risk, they dump it all on us as
Yeah.
taxpayers. And that, tell me how right that is. How right is that these people will make the money from this thing if it ever gets off the ground, but then the people of Veneta are the ones that are gonna, their property taxes are gonna go through the roof in order to pay for this thing. And they make it sound like you just said, Michael, they make it sound like it's so great, a massive 1.98 billion expenditure in upfront development and construction to reach full development in 2026.
Yeah.
A nearly $100 million expenditure is required.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think I saw, as you were scrolling earlier, it says this is going to create something like 3.3 billion in economic
Yeah,
potential. Where is that?
You're right. Hold on.
Where'd it go? Oh yeah, 3 billion
Yeah.
in new economic output. That is your future projection of value. But it's not real. This is a speculator's game. And so, what we have to do as informed, vigilant citizens is go back to the basics
people
and say, come on, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? But we are so focused on this idea of the future and the two in the bush that we are oblivious to the bird in the hand that we have, and the fact that somebody else's hand is going to come in and snatch that bird right from under us. That's what they're doing. They're saying they're weaving a tale of a dream world, and then meanwhile they're taking everything from us in the here and now. And they do it, one of the ways that they do it here in Oklahoma, in all red states, in every state, but especially I see it here, is by talking about the need for quality jobs.
Yes.
And
oh yes,
our economy is floundering, and so what we need are jobs, and we're dependent on these giant corporations partnering with the government to design a plan so that people can work, and that that hits home with people, because everyone wants to pay their bills. They want to provide for themselves and their families, and all in the news you hear about how the economy is suffering, robots are going to take over, software is going to replace human beings, and that really is a major problem, okay? But instead of pausing to think about, the solution that's being offered by these developers and the government and that cartel that they've formed, people are just, sorry, I lost my train of thought there, is how I framed it. But they're just listening to the media spin from the developers, instead of giving two thoughts to, okay, what really do we as a community need? What do I need as an individual? How can I provide for myself so that I'm not dependent on the future world that the developers and their cartel are planning for us? Do we really need them to design it, or can we do things on our own?
Yeah. You're muted, Jenny.
Well, I had to yell at a child to let dogs out who were running up. There must be something. Your dog's crazy. My dogs are crazy. Something must be going on in the world right now. Well, I think what you said, though, just now, I want to break this down so that the people listening can understand this, because I think it's so hard to synthesize these abstract things and put them together. But I think the bottom line is this: you literally cannot own the fruits of your labor if you are taxed on your property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you work and you work and you work and you buy this house and you get a mortgage, you pay the mortgage off, you think this is great, this is my home, but then the tax bill comes due. And if you don't pay that tax bill, then they'll come take your property. Well, here's the thing that really, I think, drills down to the bottom of this. So how can you be taxed for something that you don't use because it's the public good, right? And that's the whole socialist mentality, is it doesn't matter if it's for you, it's for the greater good. Put your mask on and shut up. It's for the greater good. Do this because I told you it's for the greater good. And we're just all supposed to bow obsequiously, and go backwards out the door. But that's the absolute problem. That's when we should start standing up and saying, nope, we're not doing that. Because if your property is taxed for something that you don't use, it literally is a completely wrong tax. You're being stolen from.
Or you didn't want.
Do what?
I said, or you didn't want. Let's say you were in the minority of voting on no on one of these things, either or.
Yeah.
So you're still subject to it.
Yes. And when your property is taken for that, that's a completely wrong thing. And people have always said to me, legislators included, well, you just don't want any taxes, Jenni. Well, honestly, if it were up to me, everything would be voluntary. But unfortunately, we live in a world where people are going to go, screw you, I'm not paying that. And that's not going to help. And government does have we come together as a body to be able to do specific things, like provide for our safety. That is one thing that everybody benefits at one point in time from having somebody come to put out their house fire, to protect them from an intruder coming to their home. That kind of thing is something that everybody really does benefit from. That's, if we have to pay some kind of a tax for that, okay, that should seem fair to people. But here's the thing. You don't tax your property. You don't tax your income. You don't tax the fruits of your labor. What you do is you tax a television. You tax a car,
luxury item.
Yes, something like that you can either buy or you cannot buy. You have the legitimate desire to own it or not own it, and then you get taxed on that. And then that way, people who are in lower incomes, so there are other ways to do this. And no, I'm not completely. I don't believe that everybody's just going to cough up money on their own. And yes, unfortunately, I do believe that we have to have some form of taxes. But here's the deal. Do we need to get taxed to have a new public coliseum for the Romans to fight the Christians in?
Well,
I'm just curious.
Well,
is that legitimate?
Yeah. Well, Julianne will probably agree with this. I mean, all these things, these are all, part of a very much larger plan that boils down to one thing. And you can say it. I mean, we've all heard it. All these things are just escalating towards you will own nothing and you'll love it. I mean, it's been put in our face multiple times. And that's where they're moving us to. They don't want us to own our land. They don't want us to own anything. They want to turn you into a renter or a leaseor for the rest of your life, because that's a controlled person. If you don't own your land, you're controlled.
Yeah, that's exactly what they want to do. And all of these different economic developments, I mentioned that they contribute to the experience economy, right? This is an economy that delivers value by providing you, experiences or feelings that happen during a short period of time, right? These are not goods that you own. These are fleeting enjoyments, you might say, if you enjoy going to the Coliseum and watching a big fight, But I mean, to your point, Jenny, about like the place of government, we do need a sort of central way to provide for safety. Although that term has gotten blown
It really has. I agree.
totally out of proportion
Yeah.
recently. We need, we need a police force. We need a judicial system. I mean, you've got to have a third party to look at contracts and violations and to say, here is what the law is, somebody does that, it happens in a building, and our taxes should fund that, right? And I think roads are, none of us can go build our own road, and they do
Right.
help. So, there are these different things in utilities. Okay. But
Yep.
I mean, maybe our task, and this is a bit of a daunting task, is to figure out, okay, how can we make a principled argument for these things, these limited set of needs or goals do fall under the purview of the government, and we're going to pay for them with taxes, and we're also going to put limits on what kinds of features those expenditures might have, like we're going to fund roads of this sort or whatever,
Yeah,
versus,
because you've got the OTA.
oh yeah, well, they're going to take care of us. They've got experts there. They're
Yes.
going to look at all the best policies, but
And they're going to put roads where people don't necessarily need them, just because they
Oh,
want to put people to work and have those jobs, right? And they want to sit on their little fiefdom, of money. So you're exactly right. You do have to be yes, we need people to build roads, and we should say that's something we're going to have to pay for because we all use them. But again, what constitutes a road? Are we
yeah,
building a road out in the middle of nowhere just because we have to it's like in China, they literally build cities for two different reasons. It's propaganda, number one, but it's also number two, to put Chinese to work, because you've got 80
yeah,
billion people sitting around going, well, I don't know what I'm going to do today. Right.
yeah,
So the government just puts it, this is all, it's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's a waste, all of these things. But you have similar stuff happening in America continuously, like with these dumb toll roads. It's the same exact thing. Well, our contractors have to make money somehow. We need to put them to work on something,
yeah.
and the public will say, hey, we need another road. I mean, you're 100% right, Julianne. We've got to be able to start breaking these down and going, what is our responsibility and what isn't? And I can tell you, like this is another one of those sites that you sent me, how land value capture can pay for infrastructure, affordable housing, and public services. Affordable housing, when did that get to be the government's job?
Yeah. Well, it falls under economic development, right?
Oh, I'm
So
sorry. Thank you.
now, especially after the, Kelo versus the City of New York Supreme Court decision, which was it in 2010 or something, that talked about, that legitimized the use of eminent domain powers
Okay. All right.
for economic development. So that's
Okay.
why you see this phrase all over, economic development. So we have moved from a limited government model, like Michael was saying, we have to understand, that would provide for safety, some conveniences. And sorry to interrupt myself here. I hope this isn't too meandering, but when we look at the purpose of government, it is to protect rights.
Yeah.
So, and the security of our rights. So, we need to measure, like, our expenditures on safety protecting rights, or are they contributing to a dream delusional future world that's going to give us value? Because there's a big difference between values and notions of value and rights. And we're moving away from a rights-based society, even though it's enshrined in our Constitution and in our laws, toward a values-based society. And that values-based society operates through this experience economy that is about renting value. It's about renting feelings, if I can put it that way, just to link it to the you'll own nothing and be happy. So what we have to do in this new values-based, experience-based economy is you have to cough up your money to pay for these amenities and attractions that are going to deliver what? Fleeting experiences to people to keep them, that's the bread and circuses to keep them happy while they have no real goods of their own. And you tell them that they own it because you say this is managed by a community land bank or a community wealth fund. So we all own it. But if everyone owns something, then no one owns it. Sorry, you guys always get me after I've had like way too much coffee.
Honestly,
But that's what we're going towards. So, there are no distinctions about, the proper ends of government once you've moved into this economic development paradigm in which affordable housing becomes a right. Public services for mental health becomes a right. Well, they're not rights, actually.
Yeah.
These are just feel-good experiences that you don't own, you don't control, and they suck you dry of your means to actually own anything real that you could build on, that you could use as a basis for promoting freedom and deciding your own way in life. Yeah. But now they just get to say, we're going to do this because it's going to help the economy and the community. Yeah. But it's like the washing machine. Okay, yeah, it might put some people to work temporarily to build a new washing machine every 7 years. But wouldn't it be better if you bought a washing machine that lasted 30 years and people could keep their income rather than buying a new washing machine all the time? You bought a quality product one time and then you don't have to think about it for 30 years. That's how my mom's washing machine was. I love that thing.
Yeah, I love my grandmother's. It was the same thing. I wanted to actually bring it from Ohio back here. And you're going to have to tell me later on where you bought this throwback washing machine because I would love that.
It's
one where I could determine how much water I put in it. Wouldn't that be weird?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but let's stop there.
Yeah.
That in a way is tyranny itself. We're just not looking at these things properly. Why can I not buy a washing machine I want to have that does what I want it to do? Well, because the federal government says you're a moron and you will put in as much water into that machine as I tell you to do because water is a precious commodity. And because I'm going to tell you water is a precious commodity, you'll do anything I tell you so that you can make sure you have your precious commodity of water.
Yeah. And this is how they're going to measure and manage everything is they tell you it's a precious commodity. Why? Right. Because, oh man, like water is so scarce and we have too many people in the world. And in the future, it's all going to dry up and no one's going to be able to drink anything and no one's going to be able to cook. It's going to be so terrible. So what you better do is get a smart, efficient washing machine that doesn't clean your clothes at all.
Right.
And that connects with the Internet of
Things. But
it's
smart, Julianne.
Oh, it's smart. It's smart for the people who want to make money tracking your water usage. It's smart for the people who create these little Energy Star labels for the government.
Yeah.
We don't need any of that garbage.
Well, I think before we get too far afield, I want to go back and revisit what you said. No. I want to, because we're coming up on an hour. That always happens when we get together. We could go on for like 2 hours and people would be like, I'll go take a break and tune back in. But you talked specifically a minute ago about what government's role is, and it's to protect rights. And that's not protect my right to have entertainment. It's not to protect my right to have a job. It's not any of those rights. It's my right to own my own property. It's
Yeah.
the right to the fruits of my labor. That's what those rights are about. It's not about these other things. And I think what we need to do is get it across to people that they're going to have to stop and do a little checklist in their head. Does what they're telling me protect my right to do what I want to do? Well,
Yeah.
if you can't do what you want to do because now all of a sudden your personal income tax rate has gone up or your property tax rate has gone up and you can't do what you want to do, obviously that's a no,
Yeah.
right? But we talked about so many other things too the other day about, they've got this. Oh, and you mentioned it just a second ago. The police are one thing that do protect our rights. I mean, we have a right to, our own property. And if somebody wants to come in and rob us, we need to have somebody there to help us, remove them if that's necessary. But what you have now, I was just reading a bill the other day. It popped up on my screen that's in the Oklahoma legislature right now. They've already created these fusion centers. I'm sure, Julianne, you know about fusion centers. So they've already created these fusion centers, which is all of the data that they're collecting from us, from traffic cams, from CCTVs, from where you use your driver's license, from all of these kinds of things. And they're pulling it into one place so they can monitor us. That's not protecting my rights. How is that protecting my rights?
It's not. It is the exact opposite.
So
And
there it is. We've got something that we're supposed to be paying for to protect our rights. And now they're just taxing us more and blowing hot air up our skirt, telling that this is somehow for us. And it's not, it's for them. They're collecting information on us to manipulate us and figure out how to track us.
yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. I mean, they want the data. The data is more important than the money because the data is a way to implement social credit scoring and control all of our behavior, right? And you have no rights in a corporately owned public-private or public-private partnership collectivist model that knows everything about you and has an interest in nudging your behavior toward the nebulous dream world of a flourishing, vibrant, sustainable community. There are no rights in that scheme at all. And if we think about the kind of institutional structures that the founding fathers designed in order to protect rights, these were institutions based on checks and balances and separation of powers.
Yes.
And when we see these data sharing agreements between the police and mental health agencies and your insurance provider and your employer and the federal government and the global think tanks that are telling our federal government what to do, that is absolutely not a separation of powers.
No.
And so when they talk about promoting the community and this economic development is always it's justified in terms of the benefits to the collective, like you say, when you're saying we're paying for these goods that we're not going to even use, right? It's justified in this much larger model of the community's flourishing being the precondition for any individual flourishing, which is the opposite of the way our system was designed. We start with the individual who has rights that exist before the creation of government. And so government is only instituted insofar as it is a better guarantor of those rights than we as individuals in the state of nature could be on our own, right? So the individual is first,
Yeah, well
and
said.
the community is second. But this model, this new model that uses licenses, permitting fees, taxation, slick marketing language, seamless interoperability, between agencies and efficient flows of government, that is all about this nebulous community, and it's based on a lie, and the lie is that you as an individual cannot do well unless every single other person is doing well. So that's what we have to
That's a good
fight.
point. Wow. Yeah.
But to say, at some point I need to make the decisions for myself about whether or not I am doing well, whether I'm happy, whether I am free. And I don't want the government, its police state, its surveillance infrastructure to be monitoring me, checking up on me to ensure that I'm happy because I am a contributing member of a happy, sustainable, vibrant community. We have to say the community does not come first.
Yeah. Right. And that's the bottom line. The community does not come first. It is always subordinate to the individual. The
Yeah.
individual has rights. The community doesn't have rights.
Yeah.
Well, so we're over an hour, but I want to show you a couple of things because I just wanted to, we're always kind of ending on a downer. I feel like, it's like, oh, they're all after us and there's nothing we can do. Well, I want to show, I'm going to pull in my screen again, and I'm going to show you a couple of things. So this was from yesterday, actually. So here's this. Let me back it down so you can see it. Oklahoma City says no to Sunset Amphitheater zoning request. It's the ultimate not in my backyard. And then when you look down here, let's see if some of these other photos will come up there. See, these were people in the neighborhood that got together and went. This is the Oklahoma City Council. This is the municipal building where the Oklahoma City Council is. And they all went and protested in front of the municipal building. Look at all of these people. Look.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Looky there.
Yeah.
Okay, at one point, apparently, David Holt said something like, I'm just going to go through these because there are a whole bunch of them. There it is. I love this picture. Who doesn't want this? Me.
Yeah.
So, guys, these people did this. I mean, and we may not be able to do this to the federal government at this point. It's out of our, I don't know what you're going to do with that. But we still have the state government. And by God, we have our municipal government. And if you can't start that's why I became mayor in my little town for a while. It was because this is my town. And I wanted to make sure that it was going to be proactive in protecting the individuality and the rights of the people who lived here, including myself. So, and for 4 years, that's what I did. So it's important to realize that you can affect your municipal structure. So let me show you another one then, because I thought this was really another great one. All right. Tired of being taken advantage of, officials voice support for wind farm moratorium. So what's going on is out in Lincoln County, we have a whole bunch of these private companies who are subsidized by the federal government in the name of climate change. And so these aren't private organizations that are using their own money to do anything. Back to your point, Julianne. No risk here. We're just getting these stupid climate change loans from the federal government, which is stealing money from us to put up these nasty wind turbines. And this is happening next door in Lincoln County. So I'm far northeast Oklahoma County. and next door is Lincoln County. So this is happening right next door. And there was a part of this article that I wanted to. Jeff McComas is actually a friend of mine. He ran for the Senate seat in our area last time, so 2 years ago. And this is him being quoted in this article. We just want to have some control over these big corporations that are global companies that are coming in, and we have no restrictions or guidelines for them to operate under. And so they're taking full advantage of that. And we're tired of being taken advantage of. And so there is a group of people in Oklahoma County right now, or in Lincoln County right now, that are banding together to keep these private corporations from buying up land and putting these nasty wind turbines on. And you can complain all you want to me about, oh, but it's green energy, Jenni, we need green renewable energy, blah, blah, blah. Nothing about these things are renewable.
Yeah.
Zero about these things are renewable. And if for some reason, like Julianne, you just said earlier, the fantasy world, this is part of their fantasy world, right? That we're going to live in this area where we're not using any oil and gas because it's horrible. We don't use any oil and gas. We are going to revert back to caveman days.
Yeah. Which is what they really want us to do, these controllers.
Duh.
Except your cave is going to be in a stack and pack high rise in a nice TIF zone that's been economically developed by, the smart surveillance state.
That's exactly
That's cave
with
VR goggles.
That's it in a nutshell. And then we're going to have these wind turbines out there whacking away, ruining our ability to have quiet time where we can connect with God, because standing in one of those wind turbines, you're not going to be able to think about anything other than get me the hell out of here. And it's just bad. So one more before we go on out of here. So like I said, these people are banding together and they're doing what they're working really hard to be able to get these things out. So here's another one. So this is actually on NPR right now. PFAS, forever chemicals, could be contaminating millions of acres of farmland. Well, we've had a situation out here in the nether regions where the Oklahoma City municipal water and sewer commission, along with the one in Edmond, have been draining off the liquid from the waste that goes into the sewer, drying it, and then putting it on property as fertilizer.
Yeah.
And it's heavily subsidized by these private corporations who are then being subsidized by the municipality. And so basically they will pay the landowner to put this stuff on their land. And I'm sorry, I have no love for farmers anymore. That's another group that's been stuck up on a pedestal that needs to come down, because you talk about a group of people who have used the federal government to get into yours and my pockets out of sympathy because they have a bad year. I mean, this is just outrageous. So these people put this crap, literally, on their property. But the problem is, it's not just crap. It's got all the stuff that's gone down any storm drain or any sewer anywhere in the metropolitan area. And one of the chemicals that's going down the drain, particularly out in eastern Oklahoma County, where you have Tinker Air Force Base, is a class of chemicals called PFAS, which are chemicals that are not destroyed in any way by the biologic components in the area around it. And I'll expound on that a little bit. So oil spills are horrible. We don't like them. Absolutely. And we should guard against them however we can. However, because oil is a natural component of the environment, there are environmental biological things that actually eat that oil, particularly bacteria, for example. eat and destroy oil. There's nothing that destroys PFAS. It's completely man-made. It's not destroyed. But the problem is those particular chemicals are linked to cancer and animals that are deformed and all kinds of things like this, just really bad stuff. Well, now the EPA is coming out and giving indications that people who have put this on their property may eventually have their land seized, because these are chemicals that, cause cancer and shouldn't be in the environment. I'm not a fan of the EPA, but I'm not a fan of farmers out here in this area or in any area, frankly, putting this stuff on their property. It smells horrible. It attracts flies. It gets into the water system. It's unbelievable. And there is a huge group of people that are now fighting this particular issue and working very hard to kind of stomp it to death and get some legislation to prevent it. And I will say this, when I was mayor, we actually banned it in Luther. You can't use this stuff in Luther without getting a $5,000 fine. And that's what other municipalities are going to have to do to keep this stuff out, because you've got these private companies that are usurping the individual rights to have, their land and their property without having to smell this stuff or drink this stuff in their water. So we can fight back, and we should fight back.
But you have to have the knowledge. You got to have the knowledge there, Jenni. Let me give you two more just real quick examples of that.
Please.
You ever hear of water cremation? Have you heard of that? That's kind of a new deal where people, they, instead of choosing fire cremation, they choose water cremation, and they put you in a vat with water and a lot of alkali, and then they just return your body into the water supply. So that's another place that those PFAS chemicals, it's not really a big deal here in Oklahoma. I don't think anybody's doing it, but it's catching on in a lot of states. It's just a new form of.
So you just go down the drain?
Yeah, they literally just put you down the drain in the water supply. Go look it up. It's crazy. But here's something else. You go to Home Depot, you buy some fertilizer, a beautiful bag of like Milorganite. You know what that is? That's biosolids. That's like Milwaukee biosolids, straight from the same source. The same source they're spraying out on the farmers' fields. All those biosolids, all those chemicals, all that junk. They're literally putting it in a bag and selling it to you at the store and saying, "Oh, this is organic. This is the greatest thing ever." People really need to pay attention to, because it's just the same thing with all those government organizations, sponsored organizations, all the land value things we were looking at. They have really slick marketing. It looks awesome. It sounds good. It looks pretty, but the underlying is not what you think it is.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to Julianne, what you said earlier about, and Michael, you've said this 100 times as well. We have got to practice self-government. And one of those forms of self-government, like you said, Julianne, is being knowledgeable.
Yeah. If we could get a sort of core group in each city, each county in Oklahoma to share not just news articles about what's going on, but if they could share the template for the reset with each other.
Oh, yeah.
And if we could understand how to interpret the buzzwords, if we could understand, if we could teach each other how to understand and to recognize the problem, reaction, solution pattern, and the measure, manage, monetize pattern. If we could disseminate that information across each county in Oklahoma so that, people in Garvin County could, when they see that they have a vote or, a council meeting on their comprehensive plan, or some other piece of legislation or whatever, so that they would immediately be able to spot the traps.
Yeah.
I think that would be so helpful. I'm not describing it very well, but I think, we still, even after, 4 or 5 years, when, well, what are we in? The fourth year of, since COVID,
Post-COVID,
when I
post-COVID
think
years.
everyone should be questioning things. Like,
Yeah.
if that wasn't a wake-up call, what's going to be, right?
Right.
So in the past 4 years, lots of people have been learning many new things. The overall pattern is very simple. It is, they want to measure, manage, monetize. They want to control. They use a problem, a reaction, and then a prefabricated solution to do it. And the language is all the same. I always talk about the buzzwords, because if you know the buzzwords, if you know the tropes, then you can pick it out. And anyone, even someone who had an education only in fishing, they could figure this stuff out. But what we're lagging behind in is just a large enough popular understanding of those basics,
Yeah.
so that we can get on the front side of these tyrannical initiatives. So like, if we had a core group in each county in Oklahoma that knew, every time you see, sustainable for the future, economic development, environmental protection of cultural heritage, if you see that, just what I said there, which could fit in, 2 sentences, steer clear. And we just get everyone saying, okay, here's what you look out for. And you say no. I think that would be a massive gain, because, you have people who are concerned about, different issues like the biosludge or the wind farms. Beneath all of those policy issues is the same exact pattern.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's the same language. So we have to be able to, get beyond the point where we're just sharing information and saying, oh, that's happening here too. Oh, that's happening here too. What we need to do is proactively educate ourselves. Here are the buzzwords. Here are the patterns. If you see those, run.
Yeah.
If you see those, you go to your city council meeting and you give them hell.
Yeah.
And you say, we are not going to take this, because guess what? You're at least you're just marketing this in the same terms as the reset,
Yeah.
and we don't have anything to do with that. So as long as you've got all that language, as long as you have this pattern, as long as you've got public-private partnerships and incentives for, private gains on public expenditures, if you have those things, no way. And maybe that's going to make it inconvenient for us. There might be a few good pieces of legislation that, maybe the author unwittingly used some of these terms. We might miss out on those. But I would say, if we could get every county, every city to say, when you see an amphitheater going in, when you see a green space going in, when you see transit-oriented development and back-end parking and signal, traffic signal upgrades going in, say no.
Yeah.
We could do this, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, you can do it. You just have to know some basic patterns and then share them with your neighbor and get empowered, because once you see this pattern, it is so easy to understand. And you don't have to know all the ins and outs of every policy area. You just know that violates limited government. It violates your rights. They're going to take all your money. They're going to take all your freedom. They're going to take your kids. So you have to learn the patterns: problem, reaction, solution, measure, manage, monetize, and then top 10 buzzwords, and steer clear.
Well, you know what we need to do is, I think you published those before someplace, and I need to just take them and publish them. Just what you just said, just that little bit, and then the top 10 buzzwords, and just put them up on the website for people to have to be able to go back and look at, because I think you're 100% correct. And if those people in Yukon taught us anything, it was, you go there, they had buttons. I mean, they knew they didn't want it, and they were there, and they made that happen. So but it takes some effort, and you can't have freedom without some kind of effort. I mean, I'm sorry, but you simply can't. And I guess that's the only thing that does concern me, is so many people legitimately just, they say, I've got so many things to do, I can't possibly do this too. Or they'll say, but then how is that going to affect me? I don't really care. Or then they'll say something like, well, but I don't see how that makes any difference to me. So one of the school bond that we just had a school bond in Luther, and one of the things was that they wanted to do was to have a safe room put in the middle school. There's a safe room at the high school, but they wanted one at the middle school too. So here's going to be an unpopular thing to say. So are they
Shame on you, Jenni.
I know. But here I go. Are they the school's kids, or are they your kids? Do we have advanced notification of tornadoes in Oklahoma? So if they're your kids and we have advanced notification of tornadoes in Oklahoma, you go to the school, you put down everything else you're doing, because on your list of priorities, your children come number 2 under God. So God, kids, or don't have them. I'll just tell you, don't have them. Pawn them off on somebody else. Oh, I'm sorry, you do that on the school. Pardon me. You are the one responsible for going and collecting your children when the weather is bad, bringing them back to your residence or to another place where you can be safe. But it is not the responsibility of taxpayers to fund a safe room, especially when there's already one on a campus. That's not it. That's you pushing off your responsibility on to me. I don't want your responsibility. I have enough. So there's your happy ending words for today. I'm sure that, earned us a gold star out there for everybody.
Jenni hates kids. Jenni hates teachers. Jenni hates schools.
Well, it's funny, but
farmers.
Yeah, and farmers. I hate everybody. It's just a thing. It's where I'm going with this.
You have to laugh.
I know. But I remember one time when my kids were in elementary school, before I had taken them out, and they were in elementary school, and we did have a tornado coming, and this literally happened to me. So I went to the school going, okay, I don't want them at school. I'm picking them up and I'm taking them home. I know right where we're going to go, right? I go to the school, I go in, they've already got the kids in the hallway, and I'm like, I need to pick up my kids. I can't release your kids to you.
Yeah, they still do that.
Okay, well, they didn't do it to me, because I threw a freaking fit, and I said, you will get me my children right now, or I will have a freaking fit.
Yeah.
And they did bring me my kids, and I took them home. And of course, thank goodness nothing happened, but which happens more times than not. But I mean, people, what are you thinking? And why is it that you're going to default to it's everybody else's problem and not your own? Why is that the default thinking now? Okay, and on that note,
they're not going fishing enough.
Nope, I agree. Julianne, it's always an honor and a privilege and a joy to have you on with us. You are just one of the brightest minds I think we have out there, and that we're lucky to have in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for, being you and heeding God's calling on your life and doing these things, telling us all about these things. parents.
Thank you, Jenni. And thank you,
It
Michael.
means
Like,
so much.
I really look forward to, to these conversations. And even if I have too much coffee right before we get on, you all are so nice to tolerate me. And, so it's always a pleasure.
No, you always have so much great information. We'll
Yeah.
talk about what we're going to do next month, but you've given me several great things to pull out for videos today. So thank you. And again, God bless you. I mean, for being you, and thank you for everything you do and for being a ROPE regular.
Thank you, Jenni. And let's go, Oklahoma.
We can
We're
do
gonna
it.
do this.
We can do it. We can beat the tyrannists.
Yeah. Until, we'll have a goal. Like, before I come on next time, we're going to have a template to distribute.
That's
to
a good
every
idea.
county in
Let's do that.
Oklahoma. Just a little bullet point, just that tiny little thing that I said. I'll put that together and I'll have it before our next.
Please
our
do.
next-
That would be lovely,
We're
because
going
I
to
do
start
think
at
that
home.
helps.
Individual responsibility starting right here.
Yep.
Okay, we'll see you guys.
All right. Take care, Julianne.
Julianne.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. She is so awesome. I mean, every month I get so excited when she's coming on, because I'm like, we're going to talk about some really super important stuff that people need to know.
Yeah.
And I hope that, and if we get several bunch of people who have turned in kind of later on in the podcast, and if you missed the beginning, you really need to go back and watch it through, because it's very informative. And I will pull out a couple of things. If you just want the upshot, I'll pull out a couple of those things later on for you, so that you can see them by the end of the day. But I just,
Well, think about this, Jenni. Think about this. All these things are really taking root now. These TIFs, these government-run deals, these public-private, value investment deals. What's going to happen? Let's just fast forward a little bit. Let's go down the road. These are just commonplace. They go right through. There's no opposition to any of it. It's just what happens. Let's fast forward. What happens when they need your house or your neighborhood? Now they need your neighborhood for one of these development centers.
Well, they'll just kick you off of it and take it. They're not going to care.
Yeah, that's what's coming.
Yep. No, I mean, I completely agree with you, but we've got to get people to understand. And, when you have people that legitimately don't understand, there are two prongs here that we're having huge trouble with. I don't know how I want to say it, in the country, in personal thought. I don't lack of education. I don't know, but there are two things that we're having problems with. One of them is we don't understand personal responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, we get it to a certain extent, but we don't want to follow the whole breadth of it. We just want to pull out the parts of personal responsibility that we want to follow. I mean, that's it. And then all of the other stuff, not so much, whatever. But the problem is, it's kind of an all or nothing deal. And then the second thing that we're not understanding, and the second problem that we're having, is that we don't understand that government is there to protect our rights, to protect our liberty, not to provide us
our way of life.
What?
I said not to just provide our way of life.
Absolutely. It's not to provide entertainment. It's not to provide sidewalks. It's not to provide whatever. It's to protect our liberty. So if we could get these two things back online, I understand what my personal responsibility is. And one of them is the direction, guidance, and care from the children that I have brought into the world. Right?
Yeah.
If we could get those two things, I think everything would be so much better off. But we seem to be really having trouble with the two most basic things.
Well, it's going to be the hardest, Jenni. I mean, it's a multi. I mean, we could have conversation for hours on this, but it's really boils down to just a couple things. the government is the government in general, not just federal government, state government, city government. That's the largest employer in the United States.
Yes, correct.
It is. And we live within a system of money to where there is no consequence for issuing debt by a government body. They just push everything into the future. And, they can just literally print at the federal level. They can print as much money and incentivize all that spending all the way down to your sidewalks in your town at your local municipality.
Yeah.
So, government is so big. And look, think about this. How much bigger is government now than it was even 25 years ago?
Oh, huge.
Or
I would
10
say
years ago.
I don't know. Would you say double?
Yeah,
even?
How much bigger? It's just growing out of control. And at some point, it's gonna, it's pretty bad already, but it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get a lot worse, I think.
Well, and when everybody is employed by the government finally on some level, or by a government contractor or something like that,
Yeah.
Government owns everything then.
And you
then
hear all the great
everything is
reset.
government.
Yeah, and you hear all the great reset talk, and you know what that is? That's literally a collapse of our monetary system, a collapse of our economy in one way or another. So now, who is the only person that can come save us? The government. The government,
the largest employer.
Yeah, the government is going to grow by unbelievable bounds when all that happens, and they've telepathed it now for years. It's on the way. So who's gonna be the new daddy? You're gonna have to be on food stamps. You're gonna be in government housing. You're gonna be completely dependent on the government in one way or another, because you're gonna lose your job because of the economy, because of the whole deal.
Yeah, it's very concerning. But again, just like we talked about today, I was super glad to at least show those 3 examples of people that are out there, people, making a difference in their own backyard. So you can, and you should, and you must stand up for yourself. There's no way. Government is not going to do it for you.
Well, you say it best. Just say no. You say it best. Just say no.
Exactly. Okay, so on Friday, our ROPE regular Representative Sherry Conley is going to be on. So that'll be a good day. She's going to talk about why she's leaving the legislature, and we're probably going to have some talks about that. Next Wednesday, we've got Visit on, so you'll want to stay for that. She just released a new Substack today, another very interesting article. So check her up on that. And then, so anything else before we get out of here today, Michael?
That's it.
That's it for me too. So, thank you for watching. We appreciate all our donors. Thank you to those who do help us out. We do appreciate that very much. So thank you so much. And thank you again for watching. And as we always say at the end of the program, if you're going to watch it, share it. There's no way. The only way to get people on board is by telling them what's going on out there. And the only way to do that is share it. So if you're going to watch it, share it. Thanks for being with us. And we will see you again on Friday morning. So have a great time until then.